Hey there, and welcome to another episode of One Email, Two Takes. I'm your co-host, Will Allred. You'll notice I'm writing solo this week, but we've got an extra special episode where we're going to focus on LinkedIn DMs as opposed to the usual email conversation. Now, if you're not familiar, this is a weekly sales hacker show where myself and my colleague, Christina Finsa, take cold emails that have either been sent to us or submitted for feedback. We offer our perspective on how they wrote the email, but we also offer our two takes, right? One email, two takes on how we would rewrite said email. And so today, I've decided to showcase a different way or a couple different ways that I would rewrite some InMail that's been sent to me. Now, most people think of InMail and they don't necessarily have a positive impression. And I think the reason why that's the case is because most InMail is pretty bad, right? Like most InMail, you think of an InMail and you think of an absolute monologue that's terrible. You probably think of something that looks like this. So the sad state of InMail. Now, you'll notice here, this is not a good message. And there's a few things regarding the viewer's experience that I think y'all would really benefit from seeing. And so I've taken a couple screenshots from my inbox perspective so you can see how it showcases to me. Particularly when I think about email to InMail translation, one of the key things that kind of stands out is the beginning of the message really matters, very similar to email, but so does the bottom of the message. The very end of the message is also very important, and I'll show you why. But first, let's break down this message itself. So subject line, pretty long. AI ML, big data tech team at company name. Hello, Will. I hope you are doing well. I am writing to you to explore opportunities for our companies to work together. Over the years, we have built robust capabilities in the areas of big data, AI, ML. It's an offshore company that's hoping that we're looking to outsource some AI ML work. Now, obviously, we do all this in-house. And so even if it was a very short message, I would have probably still told them no. But their approach makes a big difference in whether or not I'm going to take the effort to respond to a message like this, right? Like, I don't care that they're listed on India's national stock exchange, right? I also don't care about this gigantic paragraph. I talk about a lot the likelihood that your message is going to be read on a mobile phone and people's disdain for big walls of text, right? You're 8 times more likely to have your first impression of an email on a mobile device. And so thinking about how that translates back to cold email, or when it translates back to LinkedIn, it's still just as important to think about what that reader's experience is going to look like, knowing that people have this massive aversion to long messages, big walls of text. So this thing all together, right? It's got a lot of bad traits to it. We see in cold email, informative tones have a massive negative relationship with getting a response that's positive. And these two paragraphs are a huge example of why that's the case, right? Yes, we have that I hope you're doing well, classic cliche. Yes, they asked me to meet over coffee to like talk about things. Like, first off, that's a massive ask and I'm just not going to do it, right? I don't have time. You're meeting me in a chat window. Like, that's just not how you're supposed to engage on a platform like LinkedIn or really even in the inbox. So there's several things wrong here. Also, another pet peeve of mine is including an email signature within a LinkedIn DM. You don't even need to use your name. Let's be honest, you have a LinkedIn profile there. I'm going to click on it after you send me a message if the message is good enough. And so that should be like the goal, is to make the message interesting enough that I will go scope your profile and then respond to you according to what I think the conversation is going to be about. So first things I wanted to showcase is what I'm going to see as the reader when I get this message. So this sends to me, right? Say I'm in LinkedIn. This is my first view. This right here. I have your email signature line. That's not very helpful, right? You're not getting a lot of impact within that little note. And so recognizing this is a very busy space, I'm going to deprioritize this. This is not going to be the most important thing that's showing up in my LinkedIn inbox today, right? I get messages about people who are on a job hunt, people who want to get a job with our company, inbound prospects asking me questions, people that I've outbounded asking me questions back in response. Like there's a lot going on in that inbox. And so for this to just sit here, it doesn't drive any urgency, it doesn't tell me anything other than the likelihood that the message above probably looks like this. So that's my first view. Now, let's say I'm not by my computer. What's my first view going to be? Well, hello, Will. I hope you're doing well. A picture of the person who sent it and their name at the top. It doesn't tell me anything. So what that tells you as a writer is the beginning of that message is very important. I wouldn't even waste space with like the words hello. Nevertheless, opening up with something irrelevant, like I hope this finds you well. Doesn't even matter if you mean it. Let's be real. So you've got two sides of the coin here. What I think this really means for cold outbound, for writing solid messaging, is it opens up the opportunity to sandwich your personalization. And so you'll see my first example. Now, I put the word count next to both of my examples here. And the reason for that is because brevity is so important when it comes to LinkedIn DMs. InMail DMs, I'm using them interchangeably. Doesn't matter. Because that box is small. That box is very small, and you have a very limited amount of attention span and time that they're going to give you, right? Going back up to this, I've got all of this competing for the attention that you're trying to gather. And so you have to be very brief and very to the point. So let's maximize that mobile view. Will, in your weekly email, you mentioned hiring for AI. Okay, great. Now, say I open it on my computer, love what you're building, nice little ego stroke, but also like, I know it's probably written for me. You probably wouldn't send that unless you're feigning personalization, but I'll still double check it to make sure you're doing that. So in your weekly email, you mentioned hiring for AI. Doesn't look like you filled the role. Have you considered non-US talent for the position? Love what you're building. What I'm doing there is I'm just trying to generate dialogue by focusing on the problem, which is doesn't look like you filled the role based off of my observation. And I'm just asking a conversational question, which is, hey, is this something you've considered? Now, there might be other factors involved, right? Hey, are you set up to hire a non-US based employee? There's other ways you could ask this question, but the way that you could pose this, have you considered expanding your applicant pool to not beyond the US? There's several ways you could ask it. Point is there's a very specific pointed goal off of an observation with that sandwich personalization. And the subject line, which InMail gives you the opportunity to use, I just did something again personalized, which you'd only know that I wrote a newsletter if you subscribe to the newsletter, right? The second one. So one of the big challenges I've seen with a lot of personalization is it's very shallow, right? I see you're hiring. Okay, you can't really get that in depth with a proposed reason for why you're reaching out off of that observation, right? It's not a huge, it's a very broad topic, right? There's several things that I could be dealing with based off of that. And so you're kind of making some pretty broad sweeping assumptions off of hiring. So let's go with a double observation. Let's narrow in our frame of reference. So Lavender product question is a subject line. Again, just showcasing that I'm here and I actually did my homework. Will, checking out Lavender's product. Seems like the data it generates is driving a lot of your content. So these are two observations that I've brought together. I'll talk about this in a second. I guess Inge is strapped to focus on roadmap. Any thoughts on a part-time AI team to help unearth nuggets for your content strategy? Now, if somebody approached me with this, I would be very interested to respond. Not because I need a part-time AI team to do this, but it's just such a thoughtful message. And the way it comes across as thoughtful doesn't actually require that much research, right? You've got an email product that sits in people's inboxes, and I talk about email content all the time, right? And I'm throwing data points around. If you followed me on LinkedIn, like that's what I do on a daily basis, right? So it doesn't actually take that much research to go to my activity section on LinkedIn, plus our company website. Now, I'm an easy example because I write on the internet all the time. But let's say you were reaching out to our CTO. You could say, Casey, checking out Lavender's product, amazing how much insight you're able to derive with such a small engineering team, right? So I took team size plus, what the product's able to do on the back end. There's several ways that you can mix and match multiple observations. I'm just trying to give a couple examples here. Now, a couple things that I did here. I abbreviated engineering to eng, noting that it's probably an acronym that if you ask me point blank, I'd probably be a little weird about, but reading it, I have a very clear sense of the context of why you're asking about engineering. But very clear, thoughtful question that ties back directly to what I'm doing on a daily basis to start conversation. I think one of the key things that I see a lot of sellers fail to do when it comes to utilizing LinkedIn is using it as a product or a platform to generate dialogue as opposed to generating conversions. We think about it as a conversion tool, and all of a sudden you're just spamming people at scale. Most people are not coming to LinkedIn to sell, right? Most people who are coming to LinkedIn are coming to engage with content, learn from others, catch up with old colleagues. And so when you approach them this way, it doesn't necessarily do you much good. Now, added benefit from this episode, I recently wrote a blog post with LinkedIn where we took a sample of about 28.5 million emails. And we were able to pull out some insights that you can apply to your next InMail. So that's everything from the brevity to the complexity to, the main goal here involved. There's a bunch of good stuff in here, and we'll include a link to it in the show notes. But hopefully this episode was helpful for you. Hopefully it found you well. If you enjoy sessions like this, be sure to subscribe to Sales Hackers newsletter, as well as the YouTube channel for Sales Hacker. These things go up weekly. And hopefully next week I'm joined by my co-host again, Christina Finsath. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or if you want to submit an email for feedback, shoot it over at will.allred@lavender.ai. Awesome. Thanks, y'all.